Elara's heart was pounding so loudly she thought everyone in the hallway could hear it. She darted around the corner, her school bag bouncing against her back, and pressed herself against the wall. Her hands shook as she clutched the strap tightly, trying to steady her breath. The hallway was quiet now, except for the faint echo of her hurried footsteps from moments ago. She looked behind her again. Nothing. Nobody, for now. She blinked hard, forcing back the tears threatening to spill. Just minutes ago, she had been trapped, cornered in the empty music room by Mr. Thorne, her mathematics teacher. His voice, smooth and calm, had turned into something else entirely, something cold and slimy as he leaned in too close. "You know," he had said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "I could make life very easy for you here, but only if you listened to me." When Elara had stepped back, trying to put space between them, he had grabbed her wrist. "Where are you going?" he asked, his grip tightening. "Don't act like you don't understand what I mean." Elara had yanked her hand away, the fear surging through her, making her legs move before her mind could even catch up. She ran out of the room and didn't stop until she was sure she was alone. Now, she leaned against the cold wall, her chest heaving. She had heard stories like this before, whispered tales from other girls back in her old school, warnings about teachers who got too friendly. But she had never thought it would happen to her. Not here. Not in this prestigious school her parents had worked so hard to send her to. The bell rang suddenly, jolting her back to reality. Classes were about to start, and the hallways began to fill with students. Elara adjusted her uniform quickly, trying to look normal as she joined the stream of people. She kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. "Hey, new girl." Elara looked up to see a boy from her class waving at her. She couldn't remember his name. Jackson, maybe? He had been one of the loud ones during her first week, joking about how the new girl was too quiet. Now, his grin made her stomach twist. "I heard you ran into Mr. Thorne earlier," Jackson said loudly, his tone mocking. "Hope he didn't scare you too much. He's harmless, most of the time." Laughter rippled through the group of boys around him. Elara's face burned, and she didn't know what to say. Did they know? Were they making fun of her? She felt the weight of their stares and quickly turned away, heading to her next class without responding. The day dragged on, each class blending into the next. Elara tried to focus, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the music room. Every time a teacher walked past her desk or called her name, she flinched. She felt like she was being watched, like someone was waiting for her to make a mistake. At lunch, Elara sat alone in the far corner of the cafeteria, picking at her pasta. She could hear the chatter and laughter of her classmates around her, but it all felt distant. She didn't belong here, she thought. She wasn't like them. All right. She looked up to see a girl standing in front of her table. The girl had a kind face and was smiling, but her eyes held a seriousness that made Elara sit up straighter. "Nia," the girl said, sliding into the seat across from her without waiting for an invitation. "I heard about what happened this morning." Elara froze. "What? What do you mean?" she stammered. "Relax," Nia said, her voice lowering. "I'm not here to judge you. I just want to help." Elara stared at her, unsure of what to say. Nia leaned closer, her tone dropping to a whisper. "Listen, I've been at this school long enough to know how things work," she said. "Mr. Thorne isn't the first, and he won't be the last. They're all the same. Teachers, boys like Jackson. They think they can do whatever they want because no one ever stops them." Elara felt a lump form in her throat. "But he's a teacher," she said, her voice barely audible. "He's supposed to protect us." Nia cut in, shaking her head. "That's not how it works here. If you try to speak up, they'll find a way to make it your fault. Trust me, I've seen it happen." Elara's stomach churned. "But what am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Just let it happen." "No," Nia said firmly. "But you need to be smart. Reporting him might not go the way you think. The school cares more about its reputation than about us." Elara stared at her tray, her appetite gone. She wanted to believe Nia was wrong, that the school would protect her if she spoke up, but deep down, she knew Nia was probably right. That evening, Elara sat in her room staring at her homework. The numbers on the page blurred together as her mind replayed the events of the day. She thought about Mr. Thorne's grip on her wrist, Jackson's mocking smile, and Nia's warning. Her chest felt tight, like she couldn't breathe. "Elara," her mother's voice called from the kitchen. "Dinner is ready." "I'm not hungry," she called back, trying to keep her voice steady. Her mother appeared in the doorway a few moments later, frowning. "You've barely eaten all day," she said. "What's wrong? Is it the new school? Are you struggling with your classes?" Elara shook her head quickly. "No, I'm fine. Just tired." Her mother didn't look convinced, but she didn't press further. "All right," she said finally. "But let me know if you need anything, okay?" Elara nodded, forcing a small smile. As soon as her mother left, the smile faded. She couldn't tell her parents. They had sacrificed so much to send her to this school. Her father had taken a job in Chicago just so she could have a better education. How could she tell them it wasn't safe? She couldn't. The next day, Elara tried to keep a low profile. She avoided eye contact with Mr. Thorne during math class, sitting as far back as possible. When Jackson and his friends passed her in the hallway, she pretended not to hear their comments. But as the day went on, the tension in her chest grew. She felt like a balloon stretched too tight, ready to burst. During a free period, she went to the library, hoping to find a quiet corner to calm down. She was flipping through a textbook when a folded piece of paper landed on the table in front of her. She looked up, startled, but didn't see anyone nearby. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the note. "No one will protect you. Better behave." Elara's blood ran cold. She scanned the library again, but there was no one suspicious in sight. Her pulse quickened, and she shoved the note into her bag, her mind racing. Who had sent it? Was it Jackson? Mr. Thorne? Someone else entirely? She didn't know, but one thing was clear, she wasn't safe. Not here. Not anywhere. That night, Elara lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. She thought about telling Nia about the note, but what could she do? If the school didn't care about protecting her, how could she protect herself? As the clock ticked past midnight, Elara made a decision. She didn't know how or when, but she was going to fight back. She wasn't going to let them win. Her heart still ached with fear, but a spark of determination flickered inside her. She wasn't alone. Nia had made that clear. And maybe, just maybe, there were others who felt the same way. For now, though, she needed to survive one day at a time. Elara walked into school the next morning with her stomach in knots. The fear from the note she had found in the library still lingered in her mind. She gripped the strap of her bag tightly as she made her way to class, her eyes scanning the hallway. Every shadow, every sudden sound made her jump. She sat at her desk near the window, trying to blend into the background. Her classmates chatted around her, but she didn't say a word. She just wanted to make it through the day without anyone noticing her. But of course, Jackson had other plans. It started during lunch. Elara had barely sat down when Jackson appeared, flanked by two of his friends. He stood right in front of her table, smirking like he owned the world. "Elara," he said, dragging out her name as if he were testing it. "I was beginning to think you were avoiding me." Elara looked down at her tray, refusing to meet his eyes. "I'm not," she said quietly. Jackson leaned closer, placing his hands on the table. His voice dropped, but there was a sharpness to it that made her heart race. "Don't lie to me. I've been nice, haven't I? But you're making it very hard for me to stay that way." "I didn't do anything," Elara said, her voice trembling. Jackson chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "Exactly. You didn't do anything. You didn't even say thank you the other day when I told everyone you're the prettiest girl in the school. Do you know how many girls wish they had my attention?" Elara's face burned with embarrassment. She could feel the eyes of the other students on her, whispering and giggling. She clenched her fists under the table, wishing she could disappear. "Leave me alone, Jackson," she said, trying to sound firm. His smirk faltered for a second, but he quickly recovered. "You don't mean that," he said. "I'm just trying to be your friend. You'll see that soon enough." With that, he straightened up and walked away, his friends laughing as they followed him. Elara sat frozen for a moment, her appetite gone. She pushed her tray aside and left the cafeteria as quickly as she could. By the time the last class ended, Elara's nerves were shot. She gathered her things slowly, hoping to avoid running into Jackson or Mr. Thorne. She felt like a mouse in a room full of cats, always on edge, always waiting for the next attack. As she stepped out into the hallway, she spotted Nia waiting by the lockers. Relief washed over her, and she hurried over. "Are you okay?" Nia asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "No," Elara admitted. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening before lowering her voice. "Jackson wouldn't leave me alone at lunch. He's getting worse." Nia sighed, crossing her arms. "That boy is trouble. He thinks he can do whatever he wants because his father is rich. But you can't let him scare you." "I'm trying," Elara said, her voice breaking. "But it's not just him. Someone left me a note yesterday. It said no one will protect me." Nia's eyes widened. "What? Elara, that's serious. Did you show it to anyone?" "No," Elara said quickly. "What's the point? The school won't do anything. They'll just cover it up like you said." Nia looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right. They probably would. But that doesn't mean you're powerless." Elara frowned. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes you have to fight back in ways they don't expect," Nia said. "You have to be smarter than them." "How?" Elara asked. "What can I do?" Nia hesitated, glancing around the hallway. "Let's talk somewhere private," she said. "I don't trust these walls." They ended up in the back of the school library, hidden among the dusty old shelves that no one ever used. Elara leaned against the wall while Nia paced in front of her, thinking. "Okay," Nia said finally. "Here's the thing. People like Jackson and Mr. Thorne, they rely on fear. They think you won't fight back because you're scared of what will happen. But if you have proof, real proof, they can't just brush it under the rug." "Proof?" Elara repeated, confused. Nia stopped pacing and looked her in the eye. "You need to record him. Mr. Thorne, I mean. If you can catch him saying something inappropriate, something that shows what he's really like, they won't be able to deny it." Elara's stomach turned at the thought. "But what if I get caught?" she asked. "What if he finds out? He already hates me." "That's why you have to be careful," Nia said. "You don't have to do it right away. Just wait for the right moment. And when you get it, come to me. I'll help you figure out what to do next." Elara didn't respond immediately. Her mind was racing, torn between fear and a desperate need for justice. Could she really do this? Could she really outsmart someone like Mr. Thorne? "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I'm asking," Nia said, her expression softening. "Just don't let them win, Elara. You're stronger than you think." Elara tried to hold on to Nia's words, but the next few days pushed her to her limit. Jackson's behavior became more aggressive. He would wait for her after class, standing just a little too close, his tone laced with fake sweetness. "Why are you always running away from me?" he asked one afternoon, blocking her path. "I'm not a bad guy, you know. I just want to get to know you." "Leave me alone," Elara said, her voice shaking. "I don't want to talk to you." Jackson's expression darkened. "You're making a big mistake," he said. "I've been nice, but don't think I can't change that." Elara managed to push past him, her heart pounding. She didn't know how much longer she could take this. Every time she thought she was safe, Jackson or Mr. Thorne would find a way to remind her that she wasn't. One evening, as Elara was walking home, she noticed someone following her. She quickened her pace, glancing over her shoulder. Jackson was there, a few steps behind, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Jackson, stop following me," she shouted, turning to face him. He smirked, unfazed. "I just wanted to make sure you got home safely," he said. "I don't need your help," Elara snapped. "Go away." Jackson took a step closer, his smile fading. "You really don't know how to be grateful, do you?" Before Elara could respond, a car honked loudly from down the street. The sound startled both of them, and Jackson muttered something under his breath before walking away. Elara stood there trembling until she was sure he was gone. When she got home, her parents noticed her pale face and trembling hands. "Elara, what's wrong?" her mother asked, concerned. "Nothing," Elara said quickly. "I'm just tired." Her parents exchanged worried looks but didn't press further. Elara went to her room, closing the door behind her. She leaned against it, her knees giving out as she sank to the floor. Tears streamed down her face, and she hugged herself tightly, feeling completely alone. The next morning, Elara found another note in her locker. This one was even shorter than the last. "You'll regret this." She didn't show it to anyone. What was the point? All she could do was keep her head down and hope for the best. But deep down, she knew that wasn't enough. She couldn't keep living like this, constantly looking over her shoulder, constantly afraid. Something had to change. And maybe, just maybe, Nia was right. Maybe it was time to fight back. Elara woke up the next morning with a heaviness in her chest. She didn't want to go to school. Every corner of that building felt like a trap, and every face felt like it was either watching her or waiting to harm her. But what choice did she have? Staying home wasn't an option. Her parents would start asking questions she wasn't ready to answer. "Are you ready, Elara?" her mother's voice called from the kitchen. Elara forced herself out of bed, dragging her feet to get dressed. As she tied her school tie, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked dull, and her shoulders slumped under the invisible weight of fear. She whispered to herself, "Just get through today." The school day started like any other, but Elara felt the tension rising with every passing hour. In her English class, she tried to focus on the teacher's voice, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was staring at her. When she glanced around, she saw Jackson seated a few rows back, his eyes fixed on her. He didn't smile or laugh like he usually did. He just stared, unblinking. Elara quickly turned away, her palms growing sweaty. By lunchtime, she could barely hold it together. She headed to the cafeteria but stopped short when she saw Jackson and his group sitting at their usual table, laughing loudly. He caught sight of her and waved her over, but there was something mocking in the way he did it. "Hey, Elara," he called out, grinning. "Come join us. We were just talking about you." Elara's stomach turned. She ignored him and walked in the opposite direction, but his voice followed her. "Too proud, her," Jackson said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "She thinks she's better than us because she's new. But don't worry, she'll come around. They always do." Laughter erupted from his table, and Elara felt her cheeks burning. She ducked into the nearest hallway, blinking back tears. Later that day, during a group project in biology class, Jackson's behavior took a cruel turn. Elara was paired with him and two other students to complete an assignment. She sat at the far end of the table, keeping as much distance as possible between herself and Jackson. "So," Jackson said, leaning back in his chair, "what's your brilliant idea, Elara? You seem to think you're smarter than everyone else." Elara didn't respond. She focused on her notebook, scribbling ideas for the project. "Hello," Jackson said, louder this time. "I'm talking to you." One of the other group members, a girl named Sophie, giggled nervously. "Jackson, leave her alone. Let's just finish this." But Jackson wasn't in the mood to stop. He leaned forward, his tone dripping with mockery. "You know, Elara, it's rude to ignore people. Do you even know how to talk to boys, or are you too busy acting like a saint?" Elara clenched her fists under the table. "I just want to finish the project," she said quietly. "Then stop acting like you're too good for everyone," Jackson snapped. "If it weren't for me, no one in this school would even notice you. You should be grateful I've given you so much attention." Elara's chest tightened, but before she could say anything, the teacher called the class to order. Jackson shot her one last glare before turning back to his notes, but the damage was done. The other students in the group avoided looking at her, and Elara felt completely humiliated. When the school day finally ended, Elara felt like she could breathe again. She packed her things quickly, desperate to leave. But as she walked out of the classroom, she saw Mr. Thorne waiting near the doorway. "Miss Elara," he said, his voice as smooth as ever. "May I have a word with you?" Elara froze. She wanted to say no, to walk away, but her feet wouldn't move. Slowly, she nodded and followed him to an empty corner of the hallway. Mr. Thorne crossed his arms, looking down at her with a smile that made her skin crawl. "I noticed your grades have been slipping," he said. "Is something distracting you?" Elara shook her head. "No, sir." He said, tilting his head. "That's strange. You seemed like such a bright girl when you first arrived. But now, well, let's just say you're not meeting expectations." Elara's hands trembled at her sides. She knew exactly what he was trying to do, but she couldn't find the words to fight back. "Luckily for you," Mr. Thorne continued, his tone softening, "I'm a very understanding teacher. I believe in second chances. If you're willing to put in a little extra effort, I might be able to help you improve your grades." His meaning was clear, and Elara felt sick to her stomach. "I don't need your help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Thorne's smile faltered. "Careful, Miss Elara," he said, his voice turning cold. "You don't want to make an enemy out of me. That wouldn't be wise." Elara didn't respond. She turned and walked away as quickly as she could, her heart racing. That evening, Elara met Nia in the same hidden corner of the library. She told her everything: Jackson's humiliation during biology, Mr. Thorne's thinly veiled threats. "This is getting out of hand," Nia said, pacing back and forth. "They're pushing you harder because they think you won't fight back." "I don't know what to do," Elara admitted. "I'm scared, Nyon. What if they hurt me?" Nia stopped pacing and looked at her. "That's exactly why you have to fight back," she said. "If you let them keep doing this, it's only going to get worse." Elara hesitated. "Do you really think recording Mr. Thorne will work?" "Yes," Nia said firmly. "If you can catch him saying something inappropriate, something that proves what he's been doing, they can't just ignore it. Even if the school tries to cover it up, we can take it to someone outside, like a journalist or the police." The idea made Elara's heart race. She had never done anything so bold in her life, but the thought of finally exposing Mr. Thorne and putting an end to his behavior gave her a small glimmer of hope. "I'll do it," she said finally. Nia smiled. "Good. But be careful, Elara. Don't let him know what you're up to." "I won't," Elara promised, though the fear in her chest didn't go away. The next day, Elara walked into school with a new sense of determination. She still felt scared, but now she had a plan. She kept her head down, avoiding both Jackson and Mr. Thorne as much as possible. When math class ended, she stayed behind, pretending to struggle with a question in her notebook. Mr. Thorne noticed her lingering and walked over, his usual smile in place. "Need some help, Miss Elara?" he asked, his voice smooth. "Yes, sir," Elara said, trying to keep her voice steady. She reached into her bag, where her phone was hidden, its voice recorder already running. Mr. Thorne pulled up a chair and sat beside her. "What's the problem?" he asked, leaning a little too close. Elara pointed to a random question in her notebook. "I don't understand this part," she said, trying to sound innocent. Mr. Thorne glanced at the question but didn't answer. Instead, he turned his attention back to her, his smile widening. "You know," he said, "there are other ways I can help you. Ways that don't involve numbers." Elara's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What do you mean, sir?" she asked, playing dumb. Mr. Thorne chuckled, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. Elara flinched, but he didn't seem to notice. "You're a smart girl," he said. "I'm sure you can figure it out." Elara didn't respond. She sat frozen, hoping the phone in her bag was picking up every word. After a few more minutes, she gathered her things and left, her hands shaking. As soon as she was out of sight, she pulled out her phone and checked the recording. It was all there, every word, every sickening hint. She found Nia during lunch and showed her the recording. "This is it," Nia said, her eyes wide. "This is the proof we need." "What do we do now?" Elara asked. Nia thought for a moment. "We need to get this to someone who will actually listen. Someone outside the school. But first, We need to make sure Mr. Thorne doesn't find out what we have. Elara nodded, clutching her phone tightly. She still felt scared, but for the first time, she also felt something else, hope. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't completely powerless. Elara couldn't stop replaying the recording in her head as she walked into school the next morning. The sound of Mr. Thorne's smooth, sly voice promising her help was burned into her memory. She hadn't slept much the night before, tossing and turning while thoughts of what might happen next filled her mind. The recording was proof, real proof, but she also knew it was dangerous. Nia was already waiting for her by the lockers when she arrived. Elara could tell from the look on her face that she had been thinking about the recording all night too. Did you bring it? Nia asked in a low voice.
Elara nodded, tapping her bag.
It's on my phone. Good, Nia said. We need to act fast before Mr. Thorne gets suspicious. Did anyone see you record him? No, Elara said. I was careful. Nia let out a breath of relief. Okay. The next step is finding someone we can trust to help us. Elara hesitated. Who? The school won't listen. They'll just protect him. Nia frowned, biting her lip. You're right. We can't go to the principal. But maybe we don't have to. Maybe we can take this outside the school. What do you mean? Elara asked, her brow furrowing. There's this journalist my cousin knows, Nia said. She writes about things like this, corruption, abuse, all of it. If we give her the recording, she could make it public. Elara's stomach twisted at the thought. What if Mr. Thorne finds out? Or Jackson? They'll come after me. I won't let that happen, Nia said firmly. We'll be careful. But Elara, if we do nothing, they'll win. You'll never be free of them. Elara stared at her feet, her mind racing. She didn't want to live in fear anymore, but the idea of exposing Mr. Thorne to the world terrified her. What if it backfired? What if they turned it all against her? Before she could answer, the first bell rang, cutting their conversation short. Think about it, Nia said as they headed to class. But we can't wait too long. Throughout the day, Elara felt like the walls were closing in on her. Every time she saw Mr. Thorne, she tensed up, afraid he somehow knew what she had done. He passed her in the hallway after lunch, giving her a long, pointed look that made her skin crawl. She gripped her bag tighter, resisting the urge to run. Jackson wasn't making things any easier. He cornered her during a free period, his usual smirk plastered across his face. Still avoiding me, I see, he said, blocking her path. Elara clenched her jaw. I'm not avoiding you. I just don't want to talk to you. Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you're so special, don't you? Always acting like you're better than everyone else. I'm not acting like anything, Elara said, trying to push past him. But Jackson grabbed her arm, his grip firm. Don't walk away from me, he said, his voice low and threatening. I've been nice to you, Elara. Don't make me regret it. Elara yanked her arm free, her heart pounding. Leave me alone, Jackson. She didn't wait for his response. She hurried away, her hands trembling. She could feel his eyes on her back as she disappeared into the crowd of students. After school, Elara and Nia met in their usual spot in the library. Elara told Nia about Jackson's latest attempt to intimidate her, and Nia's expression darkened. He's getting desperate, Nia said. And Mr. Thorne must be too. They can probably tell you're not as scared as you used to be. Elara swallowed hard. That's because I have you, she said softly. I don't think I could do this alone. You're not alone, Nia said, placing a hand on Elara's shoulder. We're in this together. They spent the next hour discussing their plan. Nia promised to reach out to her cousin about the journalist, while Elara focused on keeping the recording safe. But just as they were packing up to leave, something happened that made Elara's blood run cold. Mr. Thorne appeared in the doorway of the library, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on her. He strode over, his face calm but his eyes cold. Miss Elara, he said, his voice smooth as ever. A word, please. Elara glanced at Nia, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. Slowly, She got up and followed Mr. Thorne to a quiet corner of the library. "I've been hearing some troubling rumors," he said, crossing his arms. "It seems some students think you've been spreading stories about me." Elara's heart raced. "I haven't." "Don't lie to me," Mr. Thorne interrupted, his voice sharp. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but you don't know who you're dealing with. If I were you, I'd be very careful about the choices I make." Elara's throat felt dry. "I'm not doing anything," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Mr. Thorne leaned in closer, his expression hard. "Good. Because if you step out of line, you'll regret it." He walked away without another word, leaving Elara frozen in place. Her hands were shaking, and she could barely breathe. When she returned to Nia, her friend immediately noticed something was wrong. "What did he say?" Nia asked. "He knows," Elara whispered, her voice trembling. "He knows about the rumors. He threatened me." Nia's jaw tightened. "Then we have to act fast. We need to get that recording out now, before he does something worse." Elara nodded, her fear slowly giving way to determination. She was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. The next day, Elara and Nia worked together to send the recording to the journalist. Nia's cousin helped them write a short email explaining the situation, and Elara attached the audio file with trembling hands. As they clicked send, Elara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, she felt like she had taken control of her life. But the battle wasn't over yet. As they left the library, Jackson and his friends were waiting for them outside. Jackson stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "You've been busy," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't know what you're up to, but it ends now." Elara stood her ground, her fear melting into defiance. "I'm not afraid of you, Jackson." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You should be." Before he could say anything else, a teacher appeared, breaking up the confrontation. But as Jackson walked away, he gave Elara a look that sent chills down her spine. That night, Elara lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She didn't know what the next day would bring, but she was ready for it. She had come too far to back down now. No matter what Jackson or Mr. Thorne did, she wasn't going to let them win. The trap was set. Now all she could do was wait. Elara walked into school the next morning with her heart pounding. The recording was no longer just a secret between her and Nia. It was out there now, in the hands of a journalist. She clung to the hope that the recording would make a difference, but the fear of what might happen next followed her everywhere. She felt like she was walking a tightrope, with danger waiting below. By the time she reached her locker, whispers had already started. Groups of students stood in clusters, murmuring and glancing her way. Elara pretended not to notice, quickly grabbing her books and heading to class. When she reached the classroom, Jackson was there, sitting at his usual spot near the back. As soon as he saw her, his lips curled into a smirk. "Morning, superstar," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Heard you've been making waves." Elara froze. Her classmates turned to stare, their eyes filled with curiosity and judgment. She clenched her jaw and walked to her seat, ignoring Jackson's taunts. "Come on, don't be shy," Jackson continued, leaning back in his chair. "Why don't you tell everyone about your little stunt? You think you're some kind of hero now." "Leave her alone, Jackson," Nia snapped from the next row. Her voice was steady, but Elara could see the fire in her eyes. Jackson laughed, shaking his head. "Relax, Nia. I'm just trying to understand what's going on. I mean, why would Elara try to ruin people's lives? Doesn't she know who she's messing with?" Elara gripped the edge of her desk, her nails digging into the wood. She wanted to say something to defend herself, but the words wouldn't come. The weight of everyone's eyes made her feel small, like she was shrinking into her seat. "All right, that's enough," the teacher said as he entered the room. Jackson shot Elara one last smirk before turning to face the front of the class. The tension only grew as the day went on. By lunchtime, the whispers had turned into full-blown rumors. Elara overheard snippets of conversations as she walked through the hallways. "I heard she's trying to get Mr. Thorne fired." Jackson said she's making it all up. She just wants attention. Can you believe her nerve? Every word felt like a knife cutting deeper and deeper. Elara tried to keep her head down, but the stares and snickers were impossible to ignore. By the time she reached the cafeteria, her appetite was gone. She found Nia sitting at their usual table, her face tense with worry. "Are you okay?" Nia asked as Elara sat down. "No," Elara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone's talking about me." "They're just scared," Nia said. "They know the truth is coming out, and they don't know how to handle it." Elara shook her head. "It doesn't feel like that. Feels like they all hate me." "They don't hate you," Nia said firmly. "They're just used to keeping quiet. You're making them see things they don't want to see." Before Elara could respond, a loud voice interrupted them. "Hey, Elara!" Jackson called from across the cafeteria. He was standing with his usual group of friends, a confident grin on his face. "You're not thinking of running away, are you? You know, some of us don't appreciate troublemakers." The cafeteria fell silent as everyone turned to watch the confrontation. Elara's heart raced, but Nia stood up before she could react. "Leave her alone, Jackson," Nia said, her voice sharp. "You're not fooling anyone." Jackson laughed, shaking his head. "Oh, Nia. Always the loyal sidekick. Tell me, are you the one filling Elara's head with all these ideas, or is she just that desperate for attention?" "That's enough, Jackson," a teacher said, stepping into the cafeteria. Jackson shrugged and sat down, but his eyes never left Elara. She could feel the weight of his stare even as she tried to focus on her food. That afternoon, chaos erupted. News of the recording had spread beyond the school. The journalist had published an article exposing Mr. Thorne's behavior, and it was already gaining traction online. By the time Elara reached her last class, the entire school was buzzing. Mr. Thorne didn't show up to teach that day. Rumors swirled that he had been called into a meeting with the school board, but no one knew for sure. Elara tried to focus on her work, but the anxiety bubbling inside her made it impossible to concentrate. After class, she and Nia were called to the principal's office. As they walked through the hallways, Elara's hands trembled. "What do you think they'll say?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know," Nia admitted. "But whatever happens, we'll face it together." When they entered the office, the air was thick with tension. The principal sat behind his desk, his expression unreadable. Mr. Thorne was there too, along with Jackson's father, who was one of the school's biggest donors. "This is a serious matter," the principal began, folding his hands on the desk. "We've received complaints that you, Elara, have been spreading false accusations against Mr. Thorne." Elara's heart dropped. "They're not false," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "I have proof." Jackson's father scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Proof? You mean that so-called recording? It's clearly doctored. Do you think anyone will believe the word of a student over a respected teacher?" "It's not doctored," Elara said, her voice growing stronger. "And I'm not the only one who knows what is done." The principal raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Nia stepped forward. "There are other girls, sir. Girls who have been through the same thing as Elara. They're just too scared to come forward." The room fell silent for a moment. Mr. Thorne shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his confident facade starting to crack. "This is ridiculous," Jackson's father said, his voice rising. "You're tarnishing the reputation of the school over baseless claims." Elara clenched her fists, her anger boiling over. "It's not baseless," she shouted. "You're just protecting him because you don't want the truth to come out." The principal sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Enough. This matter will be investigated thoroughly. Until then, both Mr. Thorne and Jackson will be suspended." "What?" Jackson's father exclaimed, his face turning red. "This is unacceptable." "It's necessary," the principal said firmly. "We cannot ignore these allegations." Elara felt a flicker of hope as she and Nia left the office. It wasn't over yet, but it was a start. That evening, Elara's phone buzzed with messages of support. Several girls from school reached out, sharing their own stories about Mr. Thorne and Jackson. For the first time, Elara realized she wasn't alone. "You did it," Nia said when they spoke on the phone later that night. "You gave them the courage to speak up." Elara smiled through her tears. "We did it," she said. "But it's not over yet." "No," Nia agreed. "But we're closer than ever to winning." For the first time in weeks, Elara felt a sense of hope. The web that had trapped her was beginning to unravel, and she was no longer afraid to fight back. The day of the meeting with the school board arrived too quickly for Elara's liking. As she and Nia walked to the administrative building, Elara's stomach churned with nerves. Her hands felt cold, and her heart raced in her chest. "You don't have to go through this alone," Nia said, giving Elara a firm nod. "I'll be right there with you." Elara gave a small, shaky smile. "I know," she whispered. "Thank you." When they reached the boardroom, the sight inside made Elara's breath catch. Mr. Thorne was seated at one end of the long table, his expression smug and confident. Beside him sat Jackson's father, his sharp gaze cutting through the room like a blade. The principal was there too, along with several other board members, their faces unreadable. "Please, have a seat," the principal said, gesturing to the two empty chairs at the opposite end of the table. Elara and Nia sat down, their backs straight despite the weight of the room pressing down on them. Elara clutched her phone in her hand, the recording still queued up and ready to play. She could feel the heat of everyone's stares, but she refused to look away. The principal cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "We're here today to discuss the allegations brought against Mr. Thorne and Jackson. Elara, this is your opportunity to present your case." Elara's throat felt dry, but she forced herself to speak. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "I've been harassed by both Mr. Thorne and Jackson. I have proof that Mr. Thorne made inappropriate advances toward me, and I'm not the only one. Other girls have come forward with similar stories." "That's a lie," Mr. Thorne said sharply, leaning forward in his chair. "She's making this up because she didn't like her grades. She's trying to ruin my reputation." Jackson's father nodded in agreement. "This is clearly a smear campaign. Elara is just a child. She doesn't understand the damage these false accusations can cause." Elara's hands trembled, but she didn't back down. She turned on her phone and pressed play. The sound of Mr. Thorne's slimy words filled the room, unmistakable. "You're a smart girl. I'm sure you can figure it out." The room fell silent. Elara looked up and saw the smug expression on Mr. Thorne's face falter. He opened his mouth to speak but quickly shut it again, his confidence cracking like thin ice. "That could have been faked," Jackson's father said quickly, his voice rising. "There's no way to prove that recording is real." "I don't think so," one of the board members said, her tone cold and serious. "That voice is unmistakable. Mr. Thorne, do you deny saying those words?" Mr. Thorne hesitated, his face turning red. "It's been taken out of context," he said finally. "She's twisting my words to make me look bad." Nia stood up, her voice ringing clear and loud. "It's not just Elara. Other girls have stories about Mr. Thorne too. Are we all lying, or are you just afraid of the truth?" The board members exchanged glances, murmuring among themselves. The principal raised his hand for silence. "This is a serious matter," he said. "We will need to investigate further before making a final decision." Jackson, who had been silent until now, suddenly stood up. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Elara is just bitter because I rejected her. She's making all this up to get back at me." Elara stared at him, anger bubbling in her chest. "That's not true," she said, standing up as well. "You've been harassing me since the day I got here. You cornered me, followed me, and spread lies about me. You think you're untouchable because your father has money, but you're not." Jackson's father slammed his hand on the table. "That's enough," he shouted. "You have no right to speak to my son that way." "She has every right," another voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned to see a group of girls standing outside the boardroom. There were at least 10 of them, their faces resolute and determined. Elara recognized some of them from her classes, while others were older students she had only seen in passing. One of the girls stepped forward, her chin held high. "I've been harassed by Mr. Thorne too," she said, her voice steady. "And Jackson. They've been getting away with this for years because no one had the courage to speak up. But not anymore." More girls stepped forward, each one sharing their story. The boardroom erupted in murmurs, the weight of their words crashing down like a tidal wave. Elara felt tears welling up in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of fear, they were tears of relief. By the time the meeting ended, the tide had turned. Mr. Thorne was dismissed from his position pending a full investigation, and Jackson was suspended indefinitely. The principal promised to review the school's harassment policies, though Elara suspected it was only because of the public pressure. As she and Nia walked out of the boardroom, the group of girls who had spoken up gathered around them. They hugged Elara, their words filled with gratitude and hope. "You were so brave," one girl said. "I never thought anyone would stand up to them." "We stood up together," Elara said, her voice firm. "And we're not done yet. We have to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." The next morning, Elara walked through the school gates with her head held high. The whispers and stares were still there, but they didn't bother her anymore. She knew the truth was out, and nothing could take that away. As she and Nia walked to class, they passed a group of younger students. One of the girls looked up at Elara with wide eyes. "Are you the one who stopped Mr. Thorne?" the girl asked. Elara paused, a smile spreading across her face. "We stopped him," she said. "All of us." The girl nodded, her expression full of admiration. Elara felt a surge of pride. She had been through so much, but she had come out stronger on the other side. As they walked into the classroom, Nia nudged her playfully. "You know, you're kind of a legend now." Elara laughed. "I don't feel like a legend. I just feel free." "Good," Nia said. "You deserve it." For the first time in what felt like forever, Elara believed her. Outside the school, a journalist snapped a photo of the gates, the headline already forming in her mind: "The girls who changed everything, a new dawn for justice." And Elara knew this was just the beginning. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel Echoes of Africa so that you won't miss any of our new videos. Here is another story I'm sure you will enjoy. Click on it to watch now.